Thank you so much, Prof. I think we were a little bit distracted with the noise just now, but I guess it's better. It's very interesting talk, and I believe there might be some burning questions from the participants. So you can direct your questions to Prof. Jomo or Dato' Professor Rashila from UKM, and go to the mic, and where's the microphone? Sorry. Oh, okay. All right. And introduce yourself and direct questions. Thanks.
Professor Jomo punya presentation tadi. Actually, you gave. My name is Azhar, by the way. You gave me a barrage of information, which made me very excited. You mentioned just now the financial trading, where I see that the financial trading the finance is becoming very much like a commodity, like minerals, oil, iron, steel, and so on and so forth. But financial products is not the real economy, in my opinion. They do not really contribute to the economic growth of a country. Now, what's the best way of dealing with this other than capital control? That's my first question. The second thing is that we can say that economically, no country is an island. They have to survive doing trade with others. So there is this trading bloc which are being formed, but within this trading bloc, the terms of the agreement is never fair. So how do we address this issue of being fair on equal terms, on equal strength? I believe our former Prime Minister recognized this as an issue. When TPP came into being, he came up with an alternative, East Asia Economic Caucus, to counter that one. It goes back to trading between nations. Is it good to have a free trade agreement bilaterally, or is it good to have a trading bloc as what some countries are doing? So those are my two initial questions. Later will follow them.
Prof. Jomo, very quickly, you had a slide there that was comparing the proportion of Muslim population worldwide versus the economic contribution. So also what we see in the paper, in the brochure here, whenever it comes to indicating the economic backwardness, I think nobody hesitates to bring the Muslimness as a factor. We always say and we always know, and we cannot deny that nowadays we are really struggling economically, despite all of those factors that you mentioned. We are not leading anywhere. However, when somebody among our youth wants to do some analysis about how this Muslimness as a factor can contribute to some sort of reforms, economically or culturally, you are not seen in a very good side, because like what Anchik mentioned just now, we are supposed to think about the world in regional blocks or in other frameworks. Like, I cannot come here and talk about what can Moroccans and Malaysians do together, because nothing sort of connects them. I mean, geographically, and I mean, OIC is one of those, but obviously it's not very relevant and it's not very impactful. So what is your advice for the young people if we want to talk about Muslimness as a factor in terms of positive potential? How can we be talking about it but not being seen as radical or not being seen as, how to say, fanatical or something like that? Thank you.
Assalamualaikum, Prof. Thank you. Very interesting and insightful presentation indeed. And one of the part from your presentation which struck me most is the part which you put some statistical points. Mainly, Muslims overall represents around 21% of the global population, while at the same time, we only represent only 5% when it comes to the wealth of the global population. So it explains, in a way, we are, population-wise, we are high, there's a lot of Muslims, but economically, we could say it as we are poor or we are not wealthy, or in other way, we can say that economically, we are not important, or we are just have not much of economic roles in the world globally. My general question is actually why is that to be the case? Why is it Muslims, there's a lot of Muslims, but we are just not economically, either we want to say competence, productive, or what could relate to that? In some way, reflecting to the situation, it relates to the, if I'm not mistaken, there's an hadith of the Prophet that at the current time now, there's a lot of Muslims, but at the end of the day, the Muslims are just like buih di lautan, meaning that there's a lot of, but at the end of the day, we don't really matter much, if you want to interpret it that way. But at the same time, reflecting on the same fact and points, it is something which is very critical for us to ponder. It is not that we are, that's 21% of the population, we only acquire just 5% of wealth, while at the same time, the source of wealth, such as oil, is actually within Muslim countries. And at the same time, knowing with that such richness, the inequality within Muslim communities is also high, as you has also mentioned. So relates to these facts, which for me it is something striking to be among the Muslim communities to understand the fact about this. So you could elaborate more on the reason why could this be the situation.
Thank you very much for those three excellent questions. First, Dr. Azhar raised the question of what can we do besides capital controls. I think I don't want to dismiss the role of finance, but it's long been said that finance can be a good handmaiden, a good servant, but is a dangerous master. And what we have now in the world today is a world dominated by finance. And that is what needs to be curbed. So, if you think, I don't want to suggest very extreme examples, but the last president of Korea, she was the daughter of a former president who was a military dictator. When he came to power, whether you like it or not, he industrialized Korea. And how did he do that? He came in and he rounded up the bankers. And he put a few of them in jail and he threatened to execute them. Okay? Because the bankers were really taking advantage of society. They were charging very high interest rates. And as a result of that, the Korean economy, the genuine entrepreneurs who were there, could not have access to capital. They couldn't afford it because it was so expensive. It was prohibitively expensive. So finance retarded the development of the Korean economy. Okay? Now, you all know that Nabi Isa, for example, he went to the temple, the Jewish temple, and he threw out the money lenders. Okay? There's a long tradition in Islam. There's a tradition in Christianity which is not much talked about, and there's a tradition in Judaism too. Okay. In non-Abrahamic religions as well, you have a very different view of finance. What's his name? Hamdurabi. Thank you, Elma. Hamdurabi, he demanded, he took a very, very strict view on lending, and at that time as well, it was not uncommon for every few years for the ruler to declare a jubilee, meaning that forget about all the existing debts. Let's start afresh. Okay? So there has been recognition for the last 5 millennia about the harmful, the dangerous effects when finance dominates. Okay? So you're absolutely correct. You need finance, but you cannot allow them to dominate. But what does that mean in this day and age? In 97, 98, Malaysia could have been spared the financial crisis if BAFIA, the Banking and Financial Institutions Act, was already introduced in 1989, and it prevented Malaysians from borrowing heavily abroad. Indonesia, what is the financial center of Indonesia? Orang Indonesia, mana pusat kewangan Indonesia? Siapa tahu? Pusat kewangan Indonesia bukan di Indonesia, di Singapura. Yeah? So you don't even have control of your financial system because your financial system is external. You know? Thailand, they didn't control. Everybody started borrowing. And when George Soros and other people saw the opportunity, because the Bank of Thailand, which should be above the interest of the banking interest, started serving the banking interest by raising interest rates to protect the currency. So you see that a great distortion of the economy because of the supremacy of finance. Yeah? But that doesn't mean you don't have finance. You need to have finance serving the interests of the real economy, as you put it. The second question you raised was, what do we do in this world? Well, the trend, you know, at the end of World War II, before the end of World War II, the major powers in the West got together and they said we must create these institutions for the future after World War II. We created the IMF, created the World Bank, and they wanted to create a third institution called the ITO, International Trade Organization. Okay? And the purpose was not just to how should I put it, was not just to have monetary stability. The purpose was to create the conditions for justice, for development, so that you wouldn't have another war. Okay? Because if you have an unjust situation, which is what you had after World War I, you know, the young Keynes, after World War I, at the end of World War I, he was basically carrying somebody's bag, went to Versailles, the palace in Versailles where they negotiated the peace at World War I. And he wrote a book, which to me is a more important book for ordinary people. It's called The Economic Consequences of the Peace. The peace meaning the peace which was negotiated in Versailles. And he said at that time that you do not punish the loser the way you have done so in Versailles. You know? And when you punish the loser like that, they are going to retaliate. And sure enough, Within 20 years, there was another war. Okay? So we have to learn these lessons from history. We don't, if we continue to make the same old mistakes, we are, you never give the other side a way out, then we will never be able to have any kind of social peace. Yeah, exactly. So what do we do as far as trade is concerned? What we need is to recognize in the world today that for poor countries who are struggling to create their own, to add value, it is a real struggle. I'll give you a simple example. Malaysia's number one export after petroleum is palm oil. Indonesia's number one export is palm oil. Indonesia now produces 60% more palm oil than Malaysia. We're all exporting the palm oil. Okay? So our two countries are all tied up with palm oil. For those few of you who are from Singapore, even Singapore economy is making a lot of money from exporting Indonesian palm oil. Okay? But what has happened recently? We didn't get our act together. The Europeans have now said no palm oil for biodiesel. Now, in 2006, the Americans and the Europeans had a division of this thing. Americans would go with maize-based bioethanol. Europe would go with biodiesel from other vegetable oils. Okay? That was the deal which was made in 2006. If palm oil palm oil is the cheapest vegetable oil by far, not a little bit, but by far it is the cheapest vegetable oil. Okay? We could have produced the palm oil, not we in Southeast Asia, but the oil producing countries. There are many poor countries in West Africa. Oil palm comes originally from West Africa. There are many countries in West Africa which could have benefited from this. But now they are not allowed to do so. Okay? Because you have this kind. When Tun Razak became the Prime Minister of Malaysia, many people always think about him in terms of the new economic policy. What they don't realize is that he started the nationalization of the economy. He bought over all the plantations. He bought over the mining companies. He bought over the big trading companies. Okay? Sometimes I would argue that he paid too much, the government paid too much, but whatever it is, they bought it over. What did they do after that? Okay? They realized that rubber's price had been stagnant after the end of the Korean War. Rubber price had not gone up because the Americans during World War II had developed an alternative which was called synthetic rubber, okay, which was made from petroleum. Okay? So the Malaysian-owned plantation companies quickly switched after nationalization through the market. They quickly switched to oil palm. Okay, oil palm has been grown here for over a century, but within a decade, almost all the oil palm all the rubber was replanted with oil palm, and we became an oil palm exporting country. We tried to encourage more value addition, to refine the palm oil. What happened? The Europeans had tariff escalation. Okay? In the past, when you export palm oil, if it is refined, you have to pay a higher tax to get into Europe. If it is crude, you pay a lower tax. Okay? You remember I was telling you all the stories about the different prices and so on and so forth. So this is what happened. So when the Malaysians faced this problem, so what happened was the Malaysian government introduced, sorry, mosquito. The Malaysian palm, they decided to impose an export duty. If Malaysians export crude, you pay an export duty. If you export refined palm oil, you don't. Now, within 10 years, we were the most efficient palm oil refiner in the world. Within 10 years. All the engineers from Malaysia who had been underutilized, because if you think about it, my contemporaries, okay, who graduated in the 1970s, if you were an engineer, what do? You did servicing, maintenance. That's all you do. A Malaysian engineer had no prospects. There was hardly any industry to speak of. Okay? But with palm oil, they had a chance to prove themselves. And they hung around together, just like Silicon Valley. You hang out together, you talk to each other, we learn from each other. And within 10 years, we became the most efficient. Economies of scale, because we were only a huge amount of palm oil being produced, and economies of scope. We were refining only two types of oil. Palm oil, which is from the husk of the fruit, and palm kernel oil, which is from inside the fruit. Two types of oil. The European refineries were refining rapeseed oil, now it's called canola seed oil, sunflower, all kinds of other oil. Okay? So each season they were switching from one kind of oil to another kind of oil. No specialization. Malaysian palm oil. And so when the Indonesians started, Malaysia thought, oh, we are the ones with all the engineering skills. We thought the ITB people are not any good. We were wrong. They started building better refineries than us. They learned from our mistakes. Okay? And now, Indonesians have developed a dwarf coconut tree. Okay? You know that now the price of coconut oil has gone up, right? You know, the so-called extra virgin coconut oil has all these so-called health properties and so on. That has become very, very popular in the world. Indonesians have developed a dwarf coconut tree. Now, right now, a oil palm tree has a natural life of 90 years. Okay? But what happens in Malaysia? And I think in Indonesia, we kill the tree after 25 years. Because after that it's too high and we don't have machinery to reach the tree. The fresh fruit branches are too high. So we kill the tree. But if we develop a tree which doesn't grow too high, the mature height is a certain thing, then that will be a huge breakthrough. You know? So there are, you know, we had Porim and all that, but nobody cares about research. Nobody cares about agriculture anymore. You know? And this is a very, very serious problem. So, yes, you need to have trade, you need to have and to encourage trade, but let us not forget for one moment that the rules of trade are not fair in the world. Okay? I'll tell you a story. It's a bit of a strange story. You know, almost all the international law institutions happen to have their world headquarters in The Hague. Why? Does anybody know why? But why? Why do the Dutch have this obsession with international law? Because they think they invented international law. And in a sense, they did. There was a man named Huig de Groot. You know, in Latin, he is known as Grotius. Okay, Hugo Grotius. He developed international law. But I tell you how he became famous, how he became popular. There was a Portuguese ship just near Singapore, and a Dutch ship captured the Portuguese ship. What do you call that? Normally you call that piracy. Okay? But Mr. Grotius said that was legitimate. Okay? He is also praised for being the father of international trade. And you can imagine somebody who legitimizes piracy, what he has to say about international trade. Have any of you heard of Morgan the Pirate? Yeah. Morgan the Pirate. You know how Morgan the Pirate ended his career? He was the Lieutenant Governor of Jamaica. You see, one moment you are a pirate, but when you work for the government, you're no longer a pirate, you're the governor. You see? You know? So, I mean, I don't want to go on about Melaka, okay, but I think the Orang Laut played the role of a Coast Guard. Okay, but that's another story. So, we have, developing fair rules are not easy because our interests in the developing world are not common. And we don't have negotiating capacities. Our capacities are very weak. And half the time we are easily seduced. Can you imagine the head of the Ministry of International Trade and Industry, when she retires, what does she do? She works for the Japanese government. Okay? Are you surprised that Malaysia has now signed the Comprehensive and Progressive Trans-Pacific Partnership, which offers us nothing? When you have senior officials all thinking about what they're going to do when they retire at 55 or 60 or whatever the age of retirement is, then you have a serious problem. People's interests are compromised. You cannot expect them to serve the national interest when they're looking to their next job. Elma raised a very important question of Muslim solutions, if I understood your question. I think it's very attractive in the world today, especially in the Western world, to blame. You know, you can get, until recently, you could blame Islam for anything and people would believe you. Okay? Like, there is a practice which hurts young girls called circumfibulation. Okay? Where part of the clitoris, or the whole clitoris is cut, you know, at a very young age. It was conveniently blamed on Islam. It turns out that there are many societies which practice that, okay? But it was blamed on Islam. Likewise, there are many other things which are conveniently blamed on Islam, and the prejudices are so strong. Today, in America, the easiest thing to get away with is to blame it on Russia. Okay? You know, if you got a flu, you call it the Russian flu, and people will believe you. Okay? This is the world in which we live, you know, where the media has so much power that if you have a contrarian view, you're not going to get any kind of prominence. Okay? And this is part of the problem. So it becomes all the more important that Muslim intellectuals do not allow themselves to be marginalized by an inability to address real world problems, the pressing problems of the world which humanity faces. If you're going to keep on saying, you know, oh, if only we got rid of this or that, and then everything will be solved, nobody is going to take you seriously. Okay? That is why I'm making the appeal that we have to confront the problems of the Ummah. We have to confront the problems of the world today in a comprehensive fashion. So I don't have any solution to Elma's dilemma. There's no easy solution because it is not a problem, a question of whether we have the actual solutions. It is a problem of strong cultural prejudices which are being perpetuated by forces which we have resigned ourselves to, and we, to some extent, perpetuate in our own ways. So this is why I think we have a very big problem. And I'm very grateful to her for raising this problem, but I cannot pretend I have a solution. Ehsan raised the question of why does the world think that Muslims are backward? Well, I was trying to make 2 points. One I was trying to make the point you reiterated, but the other point I was making also is that supposing 1/5 of the wealth in the world was in the hands of Muslims, but most of it was held by 100 billionaires, would the Ummah be better off? I would say not. Okay? The fact that Carlos Salim was briefly the world's richest man, I don't think any Arabs got any great satisfaction from that. The fact that he is of Arab descent. Or Carlos Goshen, also another Arab. I don't think it gives anybody any satisfaction. Of course it gives a sense of pride, that, contrary to the existing prejudices, Arabs are not incompetent, incapable, and so on. But beyond that, what satisfaction do we get out of that? So I think we have to take a very, very, we have to also raise that question, and so we have 2 challenges. One, we cannot afford to be backward as a community, as you correctly point out, but we also cannot afford to be backward in terms of our societal practices. We cannot afford to have the gross inequalities. Iqbal, in one of his famous lines, talks about the equality of the Saf. Okay, when we stand before God, we are all equal. We stand equal before God. Okay, but is that the only time we are equal? Is that the only time we are equal? Only in prayer? I think these are the kinds of things which we need, and that's why I'm very attracted by the idea of the IRF, because we have to challenge these kinds of backward ideas, which are wrongly attributed to Islam. One of the things somebody said, Wahhabism is the most dangerous problem in the world today. I said, there are some good things also, the equality of the Wahhabi in death. Okay? Have you seen a single Wahhabi tombstone? No. Okay? So there are, there are many things which we need to but look at what is happening in life. The kinds of things which go on. I mean, nobody even questions, for example, when some Saudi royalty supposedly gives 678 million US dollars. 681, sorry. I thought I took 3 million away. No, unfortunately I didn't get the 3 million. 681 million, Nobody even questions that, as if it is normal, In fact, I consider that a big crime, because that money was given to an individual in order that country, for our country to join the so-called multinational force to kill fellow Muslims in Yemen. And because nobody wants to fight on the ground, you use bombers, you use drones, and the collateral damage is incredibly high. That is what is going on. And that's why it's important for us. Today I received a petition from a friend of mine who is trying to get, people to sign up on these things. But it's very, very difficult. So why are we backward? We are backward partly because we have not fought hard enough against the forces of backwardness. And I think another problem, is that our attitude towards knowledge is a segregated view, that somehow or other we consider religious knowledge to be segregated and different from, when you say ilm, you don't separate ilm this and that kind of ilm, you don't separate that. But when it comes to the way we operate, we separate them, So I think one of the ways in which we would need to overcome this is precisely through the struggle against backwardness. And for this, I think there is the need for, I'm not sure the Renaissance is the most appropriate word, but I think the spirit of it is certainly very appropriate.
Good evening, my name is Adriana. One of the slides just now, Prof, you were mentioning about redistribution of zakat monies. I don't really have a question. It's just, what's your take about the Grameen Bank, Grameen Bank basically in Bangladesh? They were giving out, micro loans to help normal, ordinary people get out of debt. And some of the debt are very small, minuscule, and not just giving money to them to get out of debt, but basically to be entrepreneurial enough to assist them to get out of extreme poverty. So, what I read was the founder, I think after many years, he was actually pushed out of the organization, or maybe I read that wrongly. I can't remember his name, Professor Muhammad something, yeah. Yes. So the first time that I found out about Grameen Bank has been around, I think even before I was born, but I only found out about it, the existence of such a practice in an Islamic, Bangladesh, kind of a backwards Islamic country, was about 14 years ago. So wouldn't the essence of what Professor Yunus introduced, couldn't that be an alternative, we say, Islamic economic model, basically? Because when we talk about economics, even for myself, how I see it, especially here in this country, you can talk about finance or capital control, whatever it is, trading blocks. At the end of the day, the masses, out of those 21% of the Muslims worldwide, even in this country, when politicians talk big about GDP, almost 100% increment from last year to this year, the masses most of the time we're not even feeling. So what, the GDP has improved? We're still struggling. Now with introduction of GST and all that. So how I see it is Professor Yunus, he was very practical in, as you said, solving a practical solution basically. So why can't we have some sort of a model like that to help the 21% of Muslims around the world? Thank you.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Saya mungkin dalam bahasa Indonesia. Profesor, tadi dalam penjelasan atau presentasi Prof, saya belum melihat penjelasan tentang betapa pentingnya pembangunan sektor maritim di tingkat global, khususnya di Asia Tenggara. Tentu forum ini menjadi penting saya kira untuk menjelaskan tentang apa potensi yang perlu dibangun oleh negara-negara di Asia Tenggara, khususnya 4 negara penting, yaitu Singapura, Indonesia, Malaysia, dan Brunei. Karena sejauh yang saya tahu di tahun 2017 misalnya terjadi kompetisi di 3 negara, Indonesia, Malaysia, dan Singapura untuk membangun seaport
bahkan satu sama lain mencoba berkompetisi untuk membangun seaport terbesar. Dan salah satu yang menarik saya kira Singapura berhasil membuat satu prestasi membangun seaport terbesar dan terbaik di Asia. Dan yang terakhir perkembangan terbarunya adalah mereka akan membangun port yang jauh lebih besar dari yang ada sekarang. Kenapa ini saya tanya, karena saya ingin masuk dalam konteks Indonesia misalnya. Salah satu budayawan besar di Indonesia, Hilmar Farid, pernah mengatakan dalam orasi kebudayaannya, dan judulnya saya kira ini menarik, beliau mengatakan memunggungi sejarah, memunggungi maritim. Jadi kenapa Indonesia gagal membangun demokrasi, membangun ekonomi, karena Indonesia telah membelakangi laut sebagai sektor penting di dalam pembangunan ekonomi Indonesia yang sudah dibuktikan oleh kerajaan-kerajaan Islam terdahulu. Saya kira masuk konteks Malaysia juga sama kan, Sultanan Johor, Sultanan Melaka dan lain sebagainya. Maksud saya bagaimana Prof melihat potensi ini sebagai kekuatan penting yang bisa dijadikan sebagai diskursus oleh teman-teman, khususnya yang hari ini ikut di dalam konferensi yang diselenggarakan oleh Islamic Renaissance Front. Saya kira itu pertanyaan singkat saya. Terima kasih, Profesor. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
I would like to ask this question regarding a point which is quite disturbing of late. Yeah? I'm going through a lot of Malay-Indonesian work, yeah, especially on Islamic economics or Islamic development. Right? I wish they are economists like you, able to articulate, able to do also in empirical and a very discursive kind of discussion. But what I see in most cases, and this also comes from actually reputable centers of learning, universities, people who talk about Islamic development or Islamic economics, I'm not sure whether they are really interested about economics or just to tell that the Islamic system is far more superior than the convention today. Right? So reading from such work, I noticed that they are no different from theological tracts. Yeah? And then it is taught in campus with a very scientific aura. Yeah? But many times the evidence quote are actually from either Quran or Hadith. Nothing wrong with that. But I think it's a very misplaced kind of discourse that they want to create and give a Muslim a very wrong impression that that is actually the development that we need. Whereas, for example, nobody wants to talk about poverty, nobody wants to talk about excesses of capitalism, and they don't even just not even bother to talk about the new problem that say environmental pollution and so on. The most is that we are Khalifa, and then if we are good Khalifa, and then the whole world. So I see these rhetorics of 1970 Da'wah movement, still besetting these minds of these professors of researchers, and I think there are many resources spent on these research institutes, right? For some reason or another, which I think there is lacking of discourse to expose such, I think, very problematic thing. What's your position on that? Thank you.
Okay. The question that I want to ask is about this gentleman, Donald Trump, when he became president of the U.S. He was complaining about these big U.S. corporations who invested lots of money, capital, overseas at the expense of the American job market. So he advised them, you take your investment overseas, take it back to U.S. and create more jobs. When I was a young man, when I started work many decades ago, I was fortunate to be in one team that went to overseas to meet potential investors to the country. And we tried to sell our country with all the infrastructure. But when I saw your presentation just now, I saw that Malaysia, as one of those developing countries, our commodity prices is always very low, at the mercy of countries like America. And then these investors who come in here, they pay our workers the minimum. Sometimes I wonder whether the benefit that we get from them is really worth the trouble that we go through. And I understand that when we first encourage foreign investment to come in, we give them so many incentives. I remember reading Taraf Perintis. You come in here, the first 5 years, you don't have to pay any tax. You're given a piece of land for you to set up your factory and so on and so forth. And there are many other things that we need to fork out first. But there is no guarantee that these foreign investors will remain here in the long run. And the way I see it, they become very much like those investors in Africa, whom I call them the hit and run investors. The moment they make enough profit, then they cabut, close the factory, and run over. So, how should we manage this foreign investment? The true quality investment that gives you value until eternity. Now, the other point I'm trying to say, get Prof. Jomo to answer is this zakat, If we look into the zakat of all Muslim countries, I do not know how much they are worth, probably billions. Now, capital stuck in zakat, if we could unleash them into the market, I am sure they could contribute positively to the economy of the Muslim countries. But so far, I have not read any significant economic policies that has been developed by the Muslim countries, how to harness on this zakat capital. Have you got some suggestions of how best to get this capital unleashed, to get the potential value to the country?
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Pertama mungkin saya akan sampaikan dalam bahasa Nusantara. Kalau bahasa Nusantara ini mungkin bahasa campuran antara Indonesia dengan Malaysia. Yang pertama bahwa saya terima kasih sekali
namanya?
tadi. Nama saya Holi Suwaidi, saya pelajar dari Universitas Malaya dan saya di Nahdlatul Ulama Malaysia. Soalan saya adalah bahwa tadi Profesor menyinggung berkenaan dengan bahwa pinjaman yang ada di Bank Islam 99% atau 99% adalah pinjamannya berbasis dengan bukan akad mudharabah. Soalan saya sebetulnya adalah sederhana bahwa kalau misalkan menggunakan akad lain di dalam praktikal itu adakah itu masalah? Sebab di dalam Islam sebetulnya tidak ada penggunaan satu akad dengan akad yang lain itu atau kontrak dengan kontrak yang lain ini lebih utama. Itu satu. Saya pikir persoalan ini agak tidak terlalu besar ya. Itu yang kedua adalah saya sangat setuju sekali dengan pandangan Dr. Azhar tadi bahwa persoalan kita, persoalan ekonomi Islam yang terjadi. Kenapa ekonomi Islam tidak bisa jadi solusi? Kita bisa jadi contoh. Misalnya kan saya bisa kasih contoh berkenaan dengan zakat profesi, zakat pendapatan. Bahwa Al-Quran yang sudah ada itu selama belasan tahun memang tidak pernah membicarakan dan tidak pernah ada dalam Al-Quran dan hadis yang menjelaskan tentang zakat profesi. Itu adalah idea Yusuf Qaradawi dan itu dijelaskan dalam disertasi atau dalam riset beliau, dalam penyelidikan beliau dan itu baru idea. Itu sebabnya kalau misalkan ditanyakan kepada 10 ustadz, bagaimana pendapat Anda, bagaimana batasan-batasan tentang zakat profesi, maka 10 ustadz ini akan menjawab dengan jawaban yang berbeda. Itu sebabnya mengapa zakat ini, saya masih pesimis bahwa zakat ini akan bisa menyelesaikan persoalan atau bisa menjadi pendapatan negara yang sangat menguntungkan. Atau bisa menyelesaikan persoalan di satu negara, misalkan di Indonesia. Indonesia hanya berbicara tentang potensi zakat. Potensinya di mana yang akan dibicarakan? Tidak ada. Kenapa? Profesi orang di Indonesia hanya membayar seikhlasnya karena tidak ada batasan. Basnas hanya menjelaskan bahwa zakatnya seperti ini. Tidak ada dalam Al-Quran. Oke, sekarang ada beberapa orang yang mengatakan ya ayyuhalladzina amanu amfiku ma kasabtum, karena ada lafal kasabtum kemudian ditafsirkan dengan kata-kata zakat profesi. belasan tahun tidak ada pernah muhaddis ataupun juga mufassir yang menyatakan bahwa ini adalah zakat profesi. Ini mungkin yang harus dijelaskan dan bagaimana pandangan Prof persoalan ini, bahwa kita tidak pernah ada keseragaman, tidak pernah ada satu tujuan berkenaan ini. Satu, yang kedua dengan Prof Azhar tadi saya sangat setuju bahwa kita boleh geser dialog kita ini kepada yang lebih luas, bahwa interest atau bunga bank itu sebetulnya memang haram. Tapi persoalan yang besar adalah bahwa bertahun-tahun kita ini hanya berbicara tentang masalah ini. Bank haram, bunga bank haram, bagi hasil haram, dan seperti itu. Adakah di khusus kita ini bisa digeser lebih luas persoalannya? Termasuk salah satunya tentang ekonomi moral. Bagaimana kalau kita misalkan, bahwasanya salah satu pelayanan bank ini, orang yang bertugas di bank ini, bank Islam dia akan baik. Jadi kita bisa geser kepada hal-hal yang lebih luas, tidak hanya berbicara tentang bank ini haram atau tidak. Itu mungkin terlalu lebih kepada simbolik seperti itu. Dan saya minta pandangan kepada Prof berkenaan dengan apa sebetulnya yang terjadi dengan masalah bank di Indonesia. Ini khas kepada orang Indonesia, bahwa mengapa Indonesia? Saya sebetulnya dari Indonesia, dari Al-Azhar, kemudian di Indonesia saya diminta untuk belajar di Malaysia, khas untuk belajar tentang ekonomi Islam. Sebab di Indonesia sendiri sampai saat ini adalah perkembangan ekonomi Islam masih stagnan atau tidak berkembang. Padahal potensinya sangat besar. Itu soal saya. Terima kasih, Prof.
Thanks, Doctor. This one maybe Prof Jomo, or in fact Dr. Farouk can also respond. As Prof Jomo touched during his presentation some points which relates to the thesis or the theory by Max Weber, which I'm quite a fan of, in looking into the relations between religion or religious doctrines to economy, or in fact to the economic function. So if we look back to his book, The Protestant Ethics and the Spirit of Capitalism, which because when I try to recall back some of his points, in the earlier parts he relates to the early doctrines of Calvinism or even Protestantism in general. He points out the point of the calling, the importance of the calling, which as an individual, the calling is actually mainly can be said as coming from God, and that is what actually leads to how a person leads their life. So in fact, what they want to do in their life, that could also relate to what they want to do in their own economic life. Meaning there is some sense of a divine value to what they do, to their work, to their business, or things matters like that. So from such points, it relates to other matters such as the perfection of labor, the importance of success, because success is a sign of grace, and other matters. And it relates to other aspects to their doctrines which also touch on asceticism, not just asceticism in the sense of being divided from the world, but some sense of asceticism from such wealth and success. They have the tendency to restrain from being over consumptive, right? Being terlalu banyak berbelanja, terlalu banyak membazir. So from such foundation doctrines, it sets a situation which they have the tendency to succeed more economically if you want to compare to other doctrines of religions. I'm not saying I'm overall agreeing to this, but what I want to touch now is how do we compare to us Muslims and how do we practice our religious life. Generally, I'm sure we know that the Islamic ethics emphasized a lot on hard work, on the important values, on honesties. But how do we, in a way, understand religion in general? This aspect is not being emphasized as perhaps something important, which relates to also the problems which we touched just now, the issues of backwardness, the issues of, in fact, even corruption. When we are being provided some work or job, we don't really put some serious consideration on the divine elements. So, Dr. Farouk, what do you think about this with our general current understanding of Muslims in general? Is there any lack of emphasis on important doctrines which there should be some elements of changes of reform in our education, which should emphasize more, which relates to things which also relates to economic functions and things like that.
Okay. Like this topic on economy, Islamic economy is a very wide topic, and I've had my interest in this since my student days. I've been reading about it, and all the ideas that came about with Islamic banking and so on, and goes back to our Indonesian brother who questioned about this particular issue. To me, I don't know about you, Prof, but to me, by just converting from English terminologies to Arabic terminologies, for example, would not make an economic system to become Islamic. It's the values that we have about it. So, because I think tomorrow Prof will be talking about riba and so on and so forth. And I think this is a very important topic because, as I had mentioned in one of my lectures at Quizas, this university, one of our participants here came from, in Perak, I mentioned about this Muhammad Asad exegesis, Tafsir Muhammad Asad. He mentioned about the ayat, the verse on riba was among the last verses being revealed by God. There were a few, we could basically derive, a few things from this particular incident. Why was this verse was among the last few verses of the Quran? One, the Prophet did not have enough time to elaborate about this particular concept of riba. Second, which is more important, is that so that we will understand that this particular concept of riba is going to be a concept that is going to evolve throughout years, throughout our generations. And we have to understand the real essence of it. The real essence of riba is basically what we call as the mighty or the wealthy among the people who try to manipulate the economic system and to basically suppress the poor and the needy. So that's the entire essence. So to me, if we look at the current economic system, like Prof said, that 99% of the economic banking, for example, if we look at the current economic system in Islamic banking system in this particular country, for example, to me, it is worse than the conventional system. It's as simple as that. I can explain in detail about why it is worse than the conventional system, but by changing terms, al-ijarah, al-mudarabah, al-musharrakah, baik bitlaman, ajil, and so on and so forth, would not make it into an Islamic system. It is the essence of it. How do we try to mitigate it to become a just system for everyone, especially the poor among us, the needy? There are many particular verses on this aspect of, the wealth should not be circulate among the wealthy among you, and so on and so forth. This particular concept that we have to understand. And I think the problem here in this particular country is that we were teaching our students, how to become Islamic compliant kind of Sharia advisors and so on and so forth. But in the essence of it, we forgot the economic system, what Islam wanted. Prof Tariq Ramadan was correct when he said that there's no such thing as Islamic economy. What we have is ethics in the economy, right? The Islamic ethics in this economy. So similarly, to me, it doesn't matter whether you name it as Islamic economic system or not, but the values inside this economic system, it must be just. And that's the real essence and the real challenge that we have to face, and all of us, the educators and also the students. Probably you have something else to add.
Thank you very much. I really appreciated what you just said, but I will resist the temptation of elaborating further, because that's what I'm going to try to talk about tomorrow, as you indicated. Since it's getting quite late and there are 6 questions and more than 6 questioners and more than 6 questions, I will try to go through this around much more speedily. First, Adriana raised the question of the Grameen Bank. Personally, I've known Professor Yunus for quite some time before he became world famous and got a Nobel Prize and so on. But let me be very blunt about it. And he knows my views on this, and others also know my views. I've written quite a bit with another Bangladeshi named Anis Chowdhury about this issue. The fact of the matter remains that the actual rate of interest, which is implicit in the Grameen Bank loans, is actually quite high. Okay? In Malaysia, Amanah Ikhtiar subsidizes, so it is kept lower in Malaysia. But in fact, the Grameen Bank, you will find that it is minimally about 14%. Okay, 1/4 per annum. For women, the repayment rate is more than 99%. For men, it is well, I haven't looked at the numbers recently, but it's in the mid-90s, not in the high 90s. So the repayment rate is quite high when you compare with the bank and all that. Definitely, it is quite high. But the interest rate, if you calculate it, of course, they are very, very small loans, as you correctly pointed out. So any little payment would look high compared, relatively speaking. So so you may say that it is unfortunate. Our own view is, after looking at all the literature on this subject. By the way, Grameen is not the largest. Grameen simply means rural, desa. So that's all it means. Okay, there's nothing Islamic or un-Islamic about it. They don't pretend to be Islamic or anything. But we take the view that Grameen Bank is playing a very, very important role in what economists call consumption smoothing. Because in many rural societies, before the harvest, very often there is a decline in consumption because people the leftover of the previous harvest and so on, they don't have enough money to buy enough food. Or sometimes, for example, if you're not planting a food crop, let us say you're planting, say you're planting rubber, and there is a rainy season, and you're not able to collect your rubber, so your income comes down. So it plays a very important role in terms of what is called consumption smoothing. Okay, but does it really? Has it really helped people to become entrepreneurs? The evidence of it is very slim. Okay, so I think we should acknowledge how it has helped, and I'm not suggesting it has not helped, but I think we should be modest about its real potential. Now, there have been very little evaluation about Amanah Ikhtiar in Malaysia, so I won't speak about Malaysia. Now, it became very popular after Yunus got the prize, and people like Hillary Clinton and so on saw its potential for their own profile enhancement. Okay, in fact, I can tell you, because I was involved in this, that a lot of the people who were interested in it all saw the potential because of the high rate of participation of women and so on and so forth. They wanted to be associated with it. So, for example, the current Queen of Holland, when that time she was a crown princess, her father was an agriculture minister during the time of a military dictatorship in Argentina, and she wanted to be associated with this. So when I was at the UN, I've seen the rich and the mighty all wanting to be associated with it. But I would say, I'll just say, without criticizing Grameen, because I do feel that it plays a useful role, that we should not we should be more cautious about its virtues. The other point which you correctly made is why are people disbelieving about inflation figures in Malaysia? I think that's a very important point. How can you believe that when the ringgit drops from 3.2 against the US dollar to 4.4 almost at the lowest point, and then now is 3.9, and GST is introduced, which extends the amount of money collected under GST is triple what was collected under SST. And when you think about it, who paid SST? It was basically the middle class. If you go to a hotel like this, you paid SST, right? But if you go and eat on the roadside, you don't pay SST. But that warung person has to pay GST. Okay, so who gets hit by GST? It is really the poor. Malaysia, we claim that we don't have any poor, so it is really the low-income people who are paying for the GST. That is why there is popular outrage against the introduction of the GST. You know, I don't know whether you have seen this makcik from Malacca who goes on and on about the GST. You know, there's one of the videos circulating right now. So with this combination of the introduction of the GST, which is effectively introducing a 6% tax on the poor, plus the collapse of the ringgit since the end of 2014, you can understand why most Malaysians are very skeptical about the official inflation figures. Ubaidullah raised the question of maritime sector. Yes, it is true. I didn't discuss. Saya tidak membicarakan sektor maritim. Saya tidak membicarakan banyak sektor juga. Bukan hanya sektor maritim. Saya tidak membicarakan soal tanah, soal ya. Tapi seperti disebut tadi, sektor maritim itu ada potensi. Tetapi kita harus ingat bahawa sebenarnya apa yang wujud di laut misalnya sekarang sudah banyak dirosakkan manusia. Ya, misalnya kalau kita lihat kawasan-kawasan di mana pembiakan anak ikan, anak udang dan sebagainya, anak ketam, sebahagian besar itu sudah dirosakkan. Ya, sekarang di Malaysia misalnya, saya tidak tahu di Indonesia bagaimana, tetapi sumber makanan akuatik, ya, kebanyakannya dari aquaculture, bukan dari laut lagi. Ya. Jadi implikasinya cukup besar. Kalau dulu waktu saya kecil, kalau sumber protein haiwan yang paling murah ialah daripada ikan. Sekarang tidak. Ayam lebih murah. Tetapi apa jenis ayam ini? Bukan seperti dulu, ya, dia makan antibiotik yang terlalu banyak. Ya. Jadi akibat antibiotiknya yang terlalu banyak, kita juga yang makan ayam makan antibiotik itu juga. Akibatnya bakteria yang menjadi masalah bagi haiwan yang dimakan semua transformasinya, ya, ada mutationnya, ya. Akibatnya sekarang ada masalah besar apa yang dikatakan AMR, antimicrobial resistance, ya, antibiotic resistance sebenarnya. Dan ini dijangka akan menyebabkan 10 juta orang mati setiap tahun mulai lebih kurang 30 tahun dari sekarang. Ya, ya, ada banyak lagi yang bisa dibicarakan tentang sektor maritim, ya. Bagi saya sedang mengkaji apa yang berlaku di kurun 15, ya, di rantau ini. Dan bagi saya soal yang cukup menarik, mengapa Singapura sudah wujud waktu itu? Bagaimana Melaka bisa kembang, bisa jadi penting, menjadi masyhur? Bagaimana Melaka overtook Singapura? Ya, pada zaman itu. Saya tidak tahu soal jawapannya. Ya, ada kemungkinan kerana Melaka menerima Islam, Islam membolehkan perdagangan maritim, ataupun ada faktor lain, saya tidak tahu ya. Tetapi ini hipotesis yang saya minta sejarawan mengkaji di soal ini ya. Tapi untuk keadaan sekarang, saya rasa potensi Presiden Jokowi sudah mewujudkan satu kementerian, Indonesia disebut kementerian, departemen maritim ya. Dan saya rasa ini sesuatu yang cukup penting untuk Indonesia, untuk Filipina terutama sekali ya. Ini merupakan kepulauan negeri-negeri kepulauan ya. Tetapi implikasinya cukup implikasinya saya rasa dari kacamata Islam saya tidak tahu apa saya bisa sebutkan, tapi mungkin saudara boleh bicarakan ini kemudian. Yang satu lagi, Dr. Azhar timbulkan wacana pembicaraan ekonomi Islam sekarang. Saya setuju apa yang disebutkan. Apa yang mungkin tidak disebutkan Dr. Azhar, seolah-olah sebahagian ahli ekonomi yang turut terlibat dengan pembicaraan demikian ada macam inferiority complex ya. Jadi they are going to discover the whatever ayat they can and whatever hadith they can and then try to make the most out of it. You know, it's not very fruitful. You know, when you think about, I mean, you don't find in the Quran or the Sunnah, you don't find an extensive discussion of maritime law, but it developed under Islam, under all four major mazhabs. It developed, you know, but it almost stopped there, you know, as if nothing has happened in the subsequent centuries. You know, it stopped way back then. And this is the tragedy of Islamic discourse. You know, we say we have four sources of knowledge. You know, of course you hardly ever get any ijma ulama these days. You don't have any consensus, but even analogy or the most inappropriate analogies are invoked, and appropriate analogies are hardly ever. So this is a tragedy, you know. So you ultimately only have a couple of sources, which Muslim economists invoke. So that is part of the reason. I mean, let me take a very important issue, okay, which has only come up in the last 3 or 4 decades. Intellectual property rights. What is the Islamic position on intellectual property rights? You know, I mean, it's a big part of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the CPTPP, but nobody says anything about the intellectual property rights and its legitimacy or its illegitimacy from an Islamic point of view. You know, we all happily sign on to it. Or something like ISDS, Investor-State Dispute Settlement. Since when does Islam legitimize taking the jurisdiction for the hearing of something like that out of the national court system and allowing some private tribunal, probably based in Singapore, to arbitrate? And we are all bound by it. That is the essence of the CPTPP, you know. And you know, so it is really quite sad, you know. I think, Dr. Azhar, you're absolutely correct. But I would be a bit more generous on the reminder that we are all vicegerents of God, Khalifah Allah. Because I think that actually reminds us of rights and responsibilities. And that, I think, has tremendous potential. Not the way, as you correctly point out, it is invoked, but I do think that it has much more potential there. Azhar, you raised the question of incentives. I'm not against incentives. I think almost all economies have actually developed with the selective use of incentives. If you think, for example, of the US economy, everybody thinks that it all developed because of free trade and so on and so forth. It's a myth. If the North had not won the Civil War, if Lincoln had not won the Civil War, if Lincoln had lost, the US economy today would be more like Australia's economy, an agrarian economy. Because the South was an agrarian economy. The North was the industrial economy. It was the North which beat the South. If the South had beaten the North, the history would be very, very different. And so I think, if we think about what has happened in Malaysia, you think, for example, Haji Ramli Musa. Okay? Ramli Musa gets a break with Proton. He develops certain parts. Those parts become internationally, he does it very well. He is now so internationally competitive, he can go to Rayong. Rayong is producing almost 1 million cars a year in Thailand, and he can compete with anybody and produce those parts. He is going to India, and he's doing the same thing with Maruti Suzuki and so on. So I do think that a little bit of help has been part of the history of all catch-up development, whether it was Peter the Great in Russia, or if you look at the period after the Civil War in the US and so on and so forth. So I'm not against incentives. I'm not against enabling this, but it has to be done on the basis of demonstrated criteria which are fair, not on the basis of know who, which is giving rise to cronyism. If you look at the latest Economist, The Economist, which is a very conservative magazine, has developed a crony capitalism index. Okay? And guess who is number one? Okay? Who is number one? Yeah? Indonesia, 20 years ago, you had the slogan KKN. Yeah? You think you're number one? We have beaten you. Malaysia is number one. Okay? Cronies, capitalism, we are number one. Okay? Economist. Dia pergi website dia. Yeah? Okay. And then managing foreign investment. You're absolutely correct. You see? Frankly, I was very critical when China had so much foreign investment in the early years. But what have they done with it? You look at Geely. Okay? Geely started after Proton. Okay? But now Geely is so successful, they managed to buy over Volvo cars. Yeah? Huh? Daimler is nothing to buy, but Volvo is something. But and now they've bought over Proton as well. But it started off with foreign investment. Foreign investment, if you are smart about it, it can be a shortcut to acquiring technology. But you must have a strategy on acquiring technology. Unfortunately, we gave a lot of incentives for foreign investments to come, but we have done nothing about acquiring technology so that our own entrepreneurs can develop. And then you raised the question about capital and zakat. Unfortunately, frankly, the record is dismal, not only in Malaysia, everywhere. So I'm not as optimistic as you are about the potential of capital and zakat to go anywhere. Let's face it, yeah? Let's face it. The zakat rates would embarrass even Trump. The zakat rates are lower than what Trump wants to put in. So I'm not going to say that we should go on a zakat is going to solve Malaysian problems. No. You know, I think we have to be very careful about overestimating the potential of zakat. Now, I think saudara dari Indonesia tentang mudarabah apa tadi 94% ya, bukan 99 ya, 94%. Apa salahnya kalau 94 bukan mudarabah? Jenis-jenis yang lain itu sebenarnya semua merupakan penyamaran bunga. Ya, itu sebabnya saya tidak setuju kalau apa yang dikatakan keuangan Islam itu hanya untuk menyamarkan Islam, menyamarkan bunga. Ya, itu saja. Yang apa potensi, kalau itu yang dimaksudkan dengan ekonomi Islam, saya sedih. Hujah utama saya tadi ialah bahawa umat Islam, tanggungjawab kita yang membicarakan soal ekonomi Islam adalah untuk menghadapi segala cabaran ekonomi yang dihadapi sekarang. Ya, bukan hanya soal bunga saja, ya, ataupun zakat saja. Ya. Kalau kita tidak dapat menyelesaikan masalah-masalah lain, saya rasa kalau Islam begitu terhad, sudah tentu tidak orang lain tidak akan pedulikan Islam. Ya. Tetapi kemampuan Islam itu lebih. Tetapi seperti Dr. Farouk sebutkan tadi, berasaskan nilai-nilainya. Kalau kita hanya cuba menggunakan kias-kias secara mekanikal, ya, kita tidak akan sampai ke mana-mana. Dan yang terakhir Ehsan tanya, soalan Ehsan itu sudah dijawabnya. Jadi sekian, terima kasih.
I think sebelum tutup saya ingin sebut sedikit tentang soalan yang peserta Indonesia tanyakan tadi. Saya ingin sebutkan di sini, salah seorang pakar syariah, or what we call syariah, yang yang menjadi penasihat kepada bank-bank Islam di Malaysia ini. Saya tidak perlu sebut namanya, tetapi beliau adalah sangat terkenal dan sering menjadi pakar rujuk kepada mereka-mereka yang ada di Malaysia ini. Pernah menulis ya di dalam blognya ya, kenapa keuangan Islam lebih mahal daripada konvensional, seperti yang saya katakan tadi. Kenapa dia lebih mahal? Dia memberi analogi, iaitu satu, kerana seperti mana di UK, ayam yang disembelih secara halal itu lebih mahal daripada ayam yang dijual di Coles dan sebagainya. Kerana itu sistem Islam itu lebih mahal ya. Yang kedua katanya, deposit ke dalam Islamic banking itu kurang berbanding dengan conventional banking. Oleh kerana mempunyai reserve yang kurang, kerana itu dia menjadi lebih mahal. To me itu menunjukkan maaf dikatakan ya, saya bukan ahli ekonomi, tetapi saya faham tentang the concept of money making. Konsep of money making sebenarnya terangkan oleh Profesor Nazari pada forum yang lalu, dan sebenarnya perkara ini telah saya ketahui 15 tahun yang lalu, bahawa money making ini, bank membuat duit bukan daripada simpanan, daripada kredit yang dikeluarkan. Ya. It is created from the bytes of the computer. Hanya daripada komputer itu di-create money. Itu adalah sistem ribawi yang ada sekarang ini. Ya. Oleh kerana itu bagi saya, apabila seorang pakar syariah ekonomi yang dikatakan syariah compliant ini gagal memahami benda asas di dalam ekonomi, saya ragu bagaimana kita hendak memajukan ekonomi Islam. Kalau the basic facts, we are wrong on that particular basic fact. Saya rasa kita akan bincang besok dengan lebih lanjut lagi Prof, dengan your presentation. Dan thank you so much Prof Rashila. I think you want to say something before we end? Yeah, okay.
Ini tentang maritim ya. Kalau kita baca balik, for example, Ananda and few others ya, dan kita ambil daripada perspektif sejarah dan juga sosiologi. Sebenarnya I think most of us here are actually seafarers. Daripada sejarahnya, daripada kalau kita tengok kajian even Hans Dieter Evers, dari segi masyarakat Melayu dan Jawa, fokus kita tu dulu di laut. It's not really the land. Tanah tu sebagai perantara sahaja. Ya, so itulah salah satu dari sejarahnya tu memang we were seafarers. And ini dalam konteks globalisasi timur lah, ya. Tapi bila by the 15th centuries and so on, with occidental globalisasinya tu, pada masa tu pembangunan itu ke arah yang masyarakat kita ni yang di lautnya tu dah dikurangkan, because skillnya dah mula kurang dan diberi kurang perhatian because of the nature that was at that time. Jadi pembangunannya ke arah tanah pula, di darat. Ya, so lama kelamaan we may have lost our skills actually. But anyway, these are issues that can be discussed further. Dasar maritim yang kalau ada di ASEAN tu memang kebanyakannya tidak ada kurang yang lengkap lah. At this point kalau dasar maritim yang agak lengkap, mungkin actually European Union has a better structure out of it. Malaysia definitely in a bad shape, ya, kalau kita dah study dasar maritim yang adanya tu. But anyway, itu lagi satu isu lah yang boleh dibincangkan.
Saya rasakan kita telah melebihi masa dan saya akan berikan semula kepada Brother Ihsan, dan ada beberapa housekeeping announcement yang akan dibuat, ya. Silakan Brother Ihsan.
Okay, terima kasih. Saya ingin jemput for a round of applause kepada mainly Prof Jomo, Dr. Farouk dan juga Prof Rashila, ya. Okey, jadi sebelum kita tutup sesi malam ini, saya nak buat beberapa mungkin just maklumat ringkas tentang, pertamanya untuk sesi esok, kita akan bermula sesi pada hari Sabtu 24 Mac esok pukul 9 pagi, dan sessionnya akan ada 5 talk. Yang pertamanya daripada Dr. Azhar Ibrahim, Muslim Intellectuals and the Varieties of Development. Dr. Azhar pun sudah sampai tadi, dia ada di belakang. Kemudiannya Dr. Najib Burhani, Muhammadiyah dan Islamic Development in Indonesia. Dan the next one, Muslim Women and the Role in Nusantara Regional Development daripada Dr. Sharifah Syahirah. Kemudian Value System and Economic Problems daripada Prof Muhammad Nazari. Dan pada waktu malam, seperti yang juga disebut oleh Prof Jomo tadi, satu lagi sesi dengan Prof Jomo tentang riba and moral economy of Islam, ya. Okey, jadi saya minta semua, sebab kita ada banyak sesi, agak pack pada waktu esok, sebaiknya kalau kita dapat cuba yang terbaik untuk hadir tepat pada masanya dan dapat attend ke semua sesi-sesi yang perlu ada. Okey, jadi saya rasa itu saja dulu. Itu saja dulu untuk malam ini, dan kita jumpa lagi esok untuk sesi diskusi yang lebih rancak lagi. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.